Hey guys, today we're talking about throwing off the hump. So throwing off the hump is one of my favorite things to do. I do it almost every morning. It is such a joy. You get a lot of reps. There's a few practicals, but I want to walk you through it. Let's check out the video. So I like to generally start with between 8 and 15 pounds of clay, but I don't center that all at once. You can, but it's a little hard on your wrist. It's a little harder to center more clay. So what I like to do is I'll get the first one centered in place, and then I will kind of score it a little bit with a rib. I'll just kind of do a little spiral, and then I'll put a second mass on top of that. And generally that saves me some time. It saves me a little bit of clay because I don't have as much like slurry coming off the sides. Now I center with both my right hand as the wall and my left hand as the wall. I can do it either way. I find that with larger amounts of clay, it's easier for me to use my left hand as the wall and my right hand on top, and it's almost like a karate chop on top. So I'll get the bottom thing centered, put that second mass on, the top one centered, and then I'll just kind of clean up that seam a little bit, and then it will disappear for eternity. I'll never see it again. And you cup just a little bit of clay in your hands, and you'll begin to feel, after doing this for a few days, the size of ball in your hands and how much you need, depending on if you're doing like a 4 or 6 ounce of clay for a candle or a communion cup, or if you're doing like 14 ounces of clay in your hand for a mug. Now, one important part about throwing off the hump is that you need to compress that base, taking your finger over and back, even taking the rib and going and kind of pressing down there a little bit, because I find that it's a lot easier for S-cracks, either as in the drying stage or after the bisque or even after the glaze fire. S-cracks seem more prevalent throwing off the hump than they do when I'm throwing like off of a bat. Now when I'm throwing off the hump, I'll have my left hand inside and it's pushing out and making that little bulge. My right middle finger is at the bottom and it's pulling that bulge up. But I find that as I push the left finger out to make that bulge, just going right below it and pushing in a little bit helps me to define the bottom of the cup and gives me something to kind of know where to cut it off, so I'm not going to cut through my base. I've cut through so many bases throwing off the hump. Now I don't really do it at all anymore because I have kind of that, it's kind of like my fingers measure where that bottom is going to be. Now all these mugs I left throw rings on, but if you wanted to get rid of those throw rings, you just hit it with a wood rib or a metal rib or a rubber rib and just take those out. Now this is a little tool. I think it's a tongue suppressor or it's like a thick popsicle stick. And I will just kind of clean up that base down there, get it all dried out, and then I'll turn it horizontally and I'll cut a little channel in there. And then with that little channel, I'll insert that string. And then I'll just let it spin a few times. And after a few times of spinning, really, you can feel it'll release. All of a sudden, you got to stop the wheel immediately, otherwise your pot will fall off. But then you can just pick it up and set it aside. And then I'm just pushing everything up. Slow it down a little bit. Oh, here, I found a rock. Now this happens. I'm using recycled clay here. So this happens from time to time. And my advice is whenever you find a rock, if you're using recycled clay or any kind of junk in there, just pick it out and get rid of it. And then you can usually just kind of compress that clay in your hand, whether that's pushing the wall together, pushing the lip down. If the wall is already pretty thin or it's already pretty high if your wall is already pretty high and you take it out, sometimes you might need to cut off that top part with a needle tool. But generally speaking, I don't have to do that very often. So I love doing this. I love even watching it. But this is my morning routine. It's just throwing off the hump. And if I get down low, I'll either take it all the way down to the base, the wheel head, the bat there, or I'll just keep throwing on more 5-pound things, just centering it on top of what I got already. And if you're done with time but you don't want to take it off the wheel, I usually center the mound of clay on top of a bat, and what I'll do is I'll just cover it with plastic, and then I'll take the bat with all that clay on it off the wheel head, and I'll put it on the side, and then I'll do whatever else I need to do, whether it's trimming or whether it's throwing with bats or whatever. Now let me show you this tool here. This is like a thick popsicle stick or a tongue suppressor, and I just drilled a hole in it. I don't know if you can see it, and then I tied a rope. It's kind of messy right now, but this is all that I use for that. I'll take it, and if the pot's up here, if I'm throwing this off, then I'll just hit it right down here to define the base, to define where it is I'm cutting it. And then below that, because I'm going to trim this after it comes off, I'm not going to leave it raw as it comes out here. I'm going to put it right here. It's going to make a little groove, and then I'll take my string, and I'll put it in that groove, and it'll twirl around, and I'll go. I won't even have to move my hand. I'll just hold it there, and I'll feel it release. And it takes a little bit of practice, but you'll feel it release, and it will be wonderful because you can fill up a whole board in half an hour to an hour. You know, you're just filling up that thing with little tiny cups or whatever, and it is a delight. Now that's really all there is to it, guys. It's really efficient. It's really relaxing. There's not a lot of waste. And it's a good way to get a lot of pots out quickly. So let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or if you have any thoughts about this, and hope you enjoy.